Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with some more spoilers. This is Wednesday, the 12th, with more Amonkhet. We have some really juicy ones. I haven't looked over all of them. I have on my Twitter feed seen a bunch of cards from yesterday. But Amonkhet does seem to be a very exciting set. We're starting to see some powerful cards that are going to mix up, I would say, at least going to make some sort of impact on Standard and Modern. There's been some talk that some of these cards are going to redefine at least archetypes in Modern. And we'll just have to get right into the spoilers and let me tell you my analysis on each one. So the first one is a Kaladesh hate card, which is called By Force, which could definitely release the Gremlins because of the mana cost is a little bit easier. Yes, you don't get a 2/2 Gremlin behind for every artifact to destroy, but instead of an XX and a red, this one is just X and a red. This could also be a replacement to Shatterstorm in Modern. I play Shatterstorm in Scred in the sideboard, and Shattering Spree, that's another one that I sometimes have in those slots. Because usually by the time you spend 3 mana, you're going to destroy enough artifacts, and this can you can spend this for just 2 mana to just be a good old Shatter. 3 mana becomes 2 artifacts, 4 mana becomes 3 artifacts, and then if you just take down key affinity pieces, if you spend about the exact same mana that you would in like Shatterstorm or Creeping Corrosion, you've most likely taken out enough cards in affinity to really handicap the deck to where it can't really function. So By Force is also going to do very good against vehicles. We do need something that can destroy the vehicles and get at least some sort of value. So even like against vehicles, destroying a clue token and a Heart of Khran for basically 3 mana on turn 3 is pretty decent. Whereas with Release the Gremlins, you'd have to spend in 5 mana, and that by that point, most of those artifacts have already done a substantial bit of damage. This, of course, is not an instant speed, so you can't get around in License Disintegration by destroying the artifact in response. But By Force is definitely going to be a very good sideboard card. I never did spec into Release the Gremlins when a lot of people wanted to. I just thought that it was underwhelming for a sideboard card. There would have to be a huge artifact deck, and even vehicles was moving further and further away from a heavy artifact base into more of a like Walking Ballista is terrible to try to kill with artifact removal because they just still get value out of it. And they weren't running a lot of like the Cultivator Caravans anymore, or Aether Harvesters, or even like Sky Sovereign Consul's flagships. And Release the Gremlins was good against those early Heart of Khans and whatnot, but it just lost value the more and more that Mardu switched over to mid range. But By Force, I think, is just a better replacement, and most decks will want this instead. So if you had to Release the Gremlins right now, is probably a good time to get out of them. Yes, people make the argument it is just 3 mana for a 2/2 left behind, whereas this is just destroy 1 artifact, don't get anything. But again, what would you rather have, a 2/2 Gremlin, or for the exact same mana cost, destroy a Clue token and a Heart of Khran? So basically your opponent doesn't get to draw a card later on, and you get a Heart of Khran, or a Walking Ballista and a Heart of Khran, or a Scrapbeat Scrounger and a Heart of Khran. So I think that By Force, again, is going to have the nod over Release of Gremlins indefinitely. The next one's an incredibly juicy card. Don't know if it's quite... Oh, geez. Yeah, this has to see play in Standard in a Naya mid-range, which is Samut, Voice of Dissent, or Samut, Voice of Dissent. 5 mana for a 3/4, which seems underwhelming, but if you really see the first thing that says Double Strike, this is more like a 6/4, so that's right on par with a 5 mana spell. It also has other creatures you control have haste, so Vigilance, Haste, and Double Strike, and Flash. And then you are able to untap another target creature with just a white and just a white, and then tap this creature. So you can untap your good old Glorybringer. And I said I was brewing a Naya Exert type deck and had Avacyn in the slot, and I think Samut would just 100% replace Avacyn, as the Flash, Double Strike, Vigilance, Haste is much better. I would think that helps enable this. It's also a human, which might be relevant, and a warrior, which might be relevant, but would make a decent Naya commander too. It's really the same old for Naya. Naya tends to be beat stick for commander, and this is just another beat stick, but it's I think it's definitely powerful enough to see standard play. And it's really cool too because you can flash this in and then immediately untap a creature, which is relevant, very relevant. Or, like I said, you can attack in, you can flash in a turn, attack in with it with double strike. It has vigilance, and then untap a creature that didn't have vigilance, like an exert creature, or even one of your bigger creatures that you need to untap for blocking. So, really like this card. I think it's insanely powerful in the right shell. Could go in like the Bristling Hydra deck with pumps, with use the Electrosex Pummeler, because it's another card that has double strike that's very easy after you give it +4/+4 to almost, just 2 cards, and this is lethal on the double strike. Oh, one other thing is this works very well with, I did a whole series with Odric. This is Odric. You get 3 relevant abilities that are hard to get right now, which is haste and double strike, to make it worthwhile. And it actually curves really well with Odric because turn 4 Odric, turn 5 Samet, and you can actually flash it in at the end of turn and then swing in for lethal on your opponent's turn, or on your turn. So the next card I really like because it might make the blue-red spells a thing, because what we've been missing is like a 3-drop, another aggressive 3-drop. We do have is this going to be like the equivalent to Thing in the Ice spot? Possibly not. Or this is also Fevered Visions kind of spot. But the Thermal Alchemist could definitely use Enigma Drake. This is a star 4 flying, and it's equal to the number of instant sorceries in your graveyard. So if you play the heavy burn or even just the heavy cantrip type deck with the Thermal Alchemist, this is another beater. The problem is we already have the 1/3 Prowess, we already have Thing in the Ice, we already have Fevered Visions. There's a lot of competition for that slot. It just has to mean that Enigma Drake is going to be worth it. And typically, though, the 3 mana is right where you want this to be with a 4 toughness body. It does get around a lot of the removal, like the Incendiary Flows and the Madness 3 damage, whatever that card is, can't think right at the moment. Still does die to Grass of Darkness, which is a thing, and Fatal Push too. It's pretty easy to get this online to kill the Enigma Drake there. But again, it's not that great of a mana investment, and it can get really, really big late game. We're talking about even bigger than Thing in the Ice. I mean, is equivalent. Thing in the Ice, you have to spend, 4 spells after it's out? So you can actually build up a bunch of spells. So it's equivalent to Thing in the Ice. Of course, Thing in the Ice returns creatures, so you can't compare that. But it's going to be a 4/4 just on the minimum comparison to Thing in the Ice. And then whatever else you have out, it could definitely start outscaling. But yeah, late game, it wouldn't be unheard of to be 8/4, 9/4, 10/4. Wayward Servant, 2/2 zombie for 2 mana. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Wow. The zombie tribal is pushed in this set, which is sad because I think they were a little hesitant for zombies in Innistrad, and now we have zombies 100% pushed, and they want it to be black-white, which I think this is definitely worthwhile to splash it. This is very similar to kind of the rally ability with Callistra Healer, other than it doesn't trigger off itself. But you got to think you have like Crypt Breakers, you have a lot of even the new Liliana, the new enchantment that puts in 2 zombies and gives all zombies +1/+1. We have the Dark Salvation from Shadows of Innistrad, as well as the Madness one, the gain 3 life and put 3 zombies in play, or X zombies and X life with Madness. And all of those, I think, are very good with this particular card. A lot of the zombie shells do want to go blue and black, because you do have Prized Amalgam, still a card that wants to see play and is very, very good in a zombie shell, especially with one of the zombies we're going to talk about in a second that was spoiled. And there are some very interesting blue cards back from Shadows of Innistrad and Eldritch Moon that work with zombies, but this might be enough to push it into white, maybe Esper zombies. And this is a strong ability, especially like against like Mardu vehicles. This is something that your life total is very relevant with Unlicensed Disintegrations and Heart of Krang getting in there for 4 per turn. So if one thing I have learned from playing my Odric list is lifelink is very good in the meta at the moment. It was quite easy for me just to continue to outpace the vehicles deck. They keep getting for damage. I keep gaining life through the lifelink creatures, and then just proceed to outclass them. So Wayward Servant can be this with zombies, especially with a lot of the zombies being renewable resources. And so little by little, you can just keep ticking down your opponent. I don't think we have like a Rally Ancestors type card right now that can get back a bunch of cards at once. But if one is printed, this could definitely be a win con. We saw with what I called rallies, rally the allies, or that sort of build. Yeah, I just don't see it at the moment. But I mean, we do have Relentless Dead that can get this back and rinse and repeat. But I mean, it's right on par as a 2/2 for 2. Kind of competing with Eileen's spot though. You'd have to always compare it to Eileen to see if it's worthwhile. All right, we have a Sweltering Suns. 3 mana. Sweltering Sun deals 3 damage to each creature, and then you can cycle it. So this card is going to be insanely good. I think this might be able to replace the I don't know. It's Anger of the Gods is probably better in Modern for Scred and similar type decks, because Anger is insanely good against Kitchen Finks. It's insanely good against Prized Amalgams, and whatnot, a lot of the recursion, which happens in Modern a ton. So I don't think that this is quite going to replace it in Scred, but it is another. Every time one of these is printed, it sees play, and the cycling is quite good now that we have ways to reduce cycling. And one of the things that makes this hard to play, like Anger of the Gods in Modern, hard to play in the main, is it's dead against so many decks. But if it does have a cycling ability to it, it might get the nod. I don't think so. I still think that the Exile cards is still better for Modern, but in Standard, this is definitely going to replace the one that we use right now. Geez, I can't think of cards at the moment. Where whatever mana you spend into it, it does damage equal. So it can do 3 damage to each creature, but it's 2 in a red, and then what is that? The Converge card. But anyway. This one is going to go great in more of the Naya mid-range. It's pretty good right now. I think it's very playable against the 2 decks. It's weaker against Mardu Vehicles than it is against the Saheeli combo. Saheeli combo wipes mainly most of the Rogue Refiners and Whirler Virtuoso, so I think it's worthwhile to put it in versus it. But you're still using your turn 3 that then you can just get comboed off, and it doesn't also kill Felidar Guardian. But if there ever is a go-wide strategy, this is going to be the card that does keep zombies down, because it will sweep them all. And it's definitely needed right now in the format in Standard. It gives control in mid-range a good out versus the more aggressive decks. And there's something that I think the Converge card just didn't really do, because you did need to be playing 3 colors to really make it worthwhile. Same thing with Kozilek's Return, only doing 2 damage. And a lot of times you'd have to rely on being able to cast a colorless card for converted mana cost high enough to make it do 5 damage. So really like the Sweltering Suns. Alrighty, we have the next one is going to be the Glyph Keeper, which is the 5 mana, 3 and 2 blue. For a Sphinx, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time, counter that spell or ability, 5/3. This is a control finisher. We also have Embalm that you have to kill it twice, basically, which is going to be it's 7 mana, though, for the Embalm, but Control doesn't care. Kill this once, they'll get it back, and then you get a 5/3. It's hard to kill because you have to kill you have to use 2 spells to kill this. It doesn't trade well with some of the flyers right now in the format, but I think that's irrelevant with the 5/3 body. The whole thing is, would you rather have Torrential Gearhulk or Glyph Keeper? I don't know if a lot of the blue control decks actually have room for both, but it's a powerful card. And Torrential Gearhulk will always be in Standard at the same time as Glyph Keeper, because they'll rotate the exact same time. So I don't know. I think this will be the bane of this one's existence. It's very, very tough to justify running this over 1 more mana to have a flashback instant, especially when we got some pretty cool instants in this set that could be abused with Torrential Gearhulk. But nonetheless, it still is a welcome sight for a lot of the blue control players, as I'm sure it will see deck lists here and there. It's just insanely hard to kill. All right, on to the April 11th. So talking about the this is the God, the Bantu the Glorified, 3 mana for a 4/6 Menace Indestructible. Can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. Then you sacrifice another creature, scry 1. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. The white-black enchantment out of 8th Revolt with the hidden strings. No, not hidden strings. It's hidden stockpile. Actually does very well with Bontu the Glorified because it. I mean, actually, this is a hidden stockpile. The second abilities are very similar with hidden stockpile. But Hidden Stockpile does, every time a creature revolt, you get a servo token. So it's going to give you more and more ammo each turn for the Bontu the Glorified just to keep attacking or blocking. And then this does seem kind of, a 4/6 for 3 mana though is quite powerful. It can block basically anything in the format. It's indestructible anyway, but it can block and kill most things in the format. Of course, the Heart of Crown just flies over top, but it actually blocks Gideon. And, I mean, Indestructible survives anyway, but it's a welcome source for 3-drop. So, I still think that maybe like a white-black tokens or a white-green tokens will want this. And so, you gotta think my old school, just my old school Eldrazi tokens deck, black-green, either servos or Eldrazi tokens, could be a card in the sideboard just to play against like the attrition war and slowly tax your opponent to death. Other than that, it is kind of underwhelming, though, I would say, as it's compared to some of the other gods in the past. It might just not get the job done as far as what you want out of like a finisher, but it's a great card overall. Protection of the Heckma. If a source an opponent controls would deal damage to prevent 1 of that damage. This is a 5 mana, and so it's actually getting around the the Fragmentize, because Fragmentize can't kill it, and a lot of the decks right now are running Fragmentize. The Sealy combos are running Fragmentize to take care of Damping Pulse as well as Authority of the Consoles. Protection of the Heckma does stop the combo because the Feldar Guardians are 1/4s, and what's cool about this is it also does stop the Whirler Virtuoso, alternate win con, out of the Saheeli combo. It reduces Chandra's tick up by 1, and so Chandra's, instead of doing 2 damage, do 1, and Saheeli's Scry will no longer deal damage to you. So this card I think will be in sideboards to combat the Saheeli combo. It is late though, it's 5 mana, so you need to really control the board and get this out. And then the Saheeli combo will have to find a way to deal with it, or otherwise you're most likely going to win this the match. So this is again going to be a great card. The problem is though, I've explained this before, I hate to say I told you so, and sound arrogant, but when we were talking about spoilers, I said ban the combo. I think it was a mistake. They shouldn't have even let it happen in Standard, because I compared it to Valakut. And I said if anyone played during Caw-Blade and Valakut days, Caw-Blade was a problem, yes, but it was more Valakut was the problem than Caw-Blade, because Caw-Blade just wrecked Valakut. It was a very lopsided matchup. We're talking about 35 to 65%, or maybe even 70 to 30% win percentage for Caw-Blade versus Valakut. But every deck in the format that could beat Caw-Blade lost miserably to Valakut. So we saw like a 2-deck Standard at that time. And then I said whether or not Saheeli combo is going to be good or not, it's not going to stop the combo players from playing it, because there's a particular demographic of people that just like to combo. And when they have an infinite combo, or they have just these all-in strategies, they're going to play them. And we saw that at the very first, that Saheeli, even though it did miserably at the Pro Tour, didn't go away, and people kept refining it and retuning it and rebrewing with it until it did solidify this 4-color energy strategy that could actually had a lot of game versus Mardu Vehicles. Now, I think with statistics, Mardu Vehicles is still slightly the favorite versus Saheeli combo, but Saheeli combo is so much better against everything that beats Mardu. Basically, right now in Standard, you cannot play a mid-range or a control deck because you will lose to Saheeli combo. And so all the decks that could beat Mardu fall victim to Saheeli combo, and then Mardu just is still around because it is the only deck that can consistently beat Saheeli combo. So I don't think like if people packing a lot of hate versus Saheeli combo, so like this particular card, Protection of the Heckma, is going to do a lot. I think it's just going to be another card that will win some games here and there, but becomes more of a liability just because you have so many packed hatred versus a specific deck that are going to get beat up by all the decks that this is just an irrelevant card. So I don't know. It's okay versus Mardu Vehicles, but preventing 1 damage. Marduk's more of an all-in strategy at this point, where they're hitting with Heartocrons and Gideons, so just reducing those by 1 each is not going to be a game plan that I think is viable. Does do very well against token-based strategies, though, and can shut down anything that tries to ping down. So another card, like we were talking about Thermal Alchemist earlier, this is a perfect card for that because it prevents 1 of that damage each time. Just completely shuts that in its tracks. So very good card for sideboards, but there's my rant for Saheeli combo. Now, here is the card that everyone's talking about. You're either on one side of the spectrum. Either this is a absolute crap card, or this is an insane card that's going to be played in Legacy, which is Harsh Mentor. Harsh Mentor is very similar to the Burning Tree, the 3-mana, 3/4 Centaur back in the day. But this is 2 damage, not 1 damage, so that's very relevant. And whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it is a mana ability, it deals 2 damage to that player. Now, there are a lot of people saying that this doesn't affect Standard whatsoever. That is completely ludicrous. I looked at basically every deck. Every deck in Standard right now has some sort of activated ability, whether it be like Walking Ballista, or activating a Shambling Vent or Hissing Quagmire, or activating a vehicle. People are upset because this does not hit Planeswalkers, so it doesn't shut down the Saheeli combo, but it stops Whirler Virtuoso from activating without taking 2 damage, so even that deck, it's relevant. And I believe there's a few other cards in that deck when I was looking it over that do get shut down, or at least get taxed by the Harsh Mentor. And Whirler Virtuoso is a huge piece to that deck. Long Tusk Cub and Bristling Hydra and the energy strategies can't activate without taking damage. Any vehicle, if you activate, it doesn't quite do Scrappy Scrounger because it says on the battlefield, so unfortunately it doesn't get around that, but it does stop virtually any other activated ability that is not a mana ability, which is tons of cards in Standard. Every deck, again, has 1 or more cards that will take damage from this card. Where this does shine is this is a great card for Frontier. I know a lot of people are still naysayers about Frontier, but this does give some hate versus fetch lands. So the 4-color, 3-color decks, now they can't activate a fetch land without taking 2 damage. So now a fetch land is going to take 3 damage every time they activate it unless they get rid of this Harsh Mentor. So that's very, very good. Very welcomed in that deck. It's got a 2/2 body for 2 mana, very similar to the Eidolon. So I think this is a hit. I think it's the most powerful card so far spoiled, at least that we know will go into sideboards and may be a budget replacement for the Eidolon in Burn. Because in Modern, I think that virtually every deck runs fetch lands, and there are a ton of abilities in Modern where this completely just shuts down the combo unless they deal with it. Think Splinter Twin. If Splinter Twin was still a thing, this would be one of those cards that shuts it down. If you look at like a lot of the Coco decks, they'll have to deal with this before they go off with the I guess it kind of nullifies the since you're gaining 2 life with the Seer and the Kitchen Finks, but they're not going to go infinite life at that point. So most Modern decks, again, too, if you look over, they either have fetch lands or just some sort of activated ability. I think Aether Hub. What are some other decks that just have a ton of activated abilities by creatures? Completely taxes them to death here. All right, onto Anointed Procession. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. 4 mana, this is a fixed doubling season, but the really thing that made doubling season so good was Planeswalkers, making the ability to ult immediately. They've tried to fix doubling season and printed in many different cards, and this is one of them. Very good card that for the populate type commander decks are going to want the card. There is a lot of tokens that are worthwhile. Remember that embalms are tokens, so if it has like a very broken embalm card, you'll get two of them. So I think that this will see play. I'm going to try to brew it, of course, in a deck. All of these type of strategies are like catnip to me, and I'll probably fail pretty terribly, but anyway. We will go on to the next one. This is Ronis the Indomitable. 3 mana for a 5/5. Death Touch Indestructible. Ronis the Indomitable can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater, and then has 3 mana to give a creature +2/+0 and trample. This is probably the most playable god so far, as it doesn't have trample itself, as Death Touch, which is kind of pointless on an indestructible creature. So you want to give away for this to get Death Touch. So I think that's kind of a fail right there. Yeah, well, I mean, what in Standard doesn't die to this already? I mean, I can think of one card which is Torrential Gearhulk. The Death Touch becomes actually relevant. But other than that, I mean, I guess it can kill... I was going to say Ulamog, but Ulamog is indestructible. What's the other one? I guess there's another 5/6, the Eldrazi that comes out with Flash. Elder Deep Fiend. Isn't that a 5/6 as well? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a 5/5. I can't remember for some reason. So, but this reminds me, what's the card they played in Humans and the white-green tokens for a long time that was the Werewolf? They couldn't attack unless you had a creature with 4 or greater. It was very easy to get that online. Think Heart of Kron here. Heart of Kron is a 4-power creature. Of course, you can't crew it with Ronis and then attack, but if you can crew it with another creature, and now you have a 4/4 creature, and then you're swinging in on turn 4 for 9 damage, and then you can also give another creature +2/+0 and trample. This is actually another way to crew Heart of Kron quite easily, is you give your 1-drop or 2-drop +2/+0 and trample, crew the Heart of Kron, then swing in. I mean, just some food for thought. It's going to be very easy to have some synergies between them. And this is, by spending 3 mana, like I criticized the Black God for just not really doing what a deck wants to be doing with the 3 mana. This one is doing what a beat stick deck wants to do, which is pump up other creatures and have a 5/5 indestructible card at its disposal. Alright, so onto the card that a lot of other people are split on, which is Nissa, Steward of Elements. This is a really cool Planeswalker because it's an X Planeswalker. I believe it's the first X Planeswalker in existence. And X, a green and a blue. It enters the battlefield with as many loyalties as you spend with X. And it has Scry 2 for the plus, which is actually relevant because it gets a +2 for a card that you can get out for 3 mana. And look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card or a creature card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of loyalty counters on Nissa, Steward of Elements, you may put that card on the battlefield. This gets really cool if you do have a lot of 1-drops. So on turn 3, you can actually activate Nissa if you just want 1 loyalty and try to hit a land and ramp up. If not, okay, so it does stay on top of your library if you aren't able to put it onto the battlefield. But the Scry 2 is very relevant with this. So turn 3, you put it in for 1, immediately tick it up, you Scry 2, so now it's up to 3 converted mana cost, and you set yourself up for the 0 ability the following turn. It's also not hard to get this up to its -6, so untap up to 2 target lands you control, and then become 5/5 elemental creatures with flying. So in a flash-based strategy, or just a blue, kind of a blue-green tempo-based strategy, this -6 can easily be a win con, because you can actually spend the mana, untap 2 target lands you control. They become 5/5 elemental creatures with flying. Sylvan Advocate's still in the format, so they can become 7/7s. If you have multiple Sylvan Advocates, they can become even bigger. And this can be lethal if you've got your opponent down to a 10 or, in this case, a 14. So I do like Nissa, Steward of Elements. I think it's going to be more of a card you have to brew around than just slam in every deck. And the blue-green is very interesting for Nissa. Nissa's now actually changing colors as well. So we have no Johnny changed colors, Nissa changed colors. We've seen Sorin be different colors before. We've seen most of the Planeswalkers be a variety of different colors. So it's definitely a welcome from Nissa just being a mono green, and usually being more of a besides the I guess Nissa's all over the place. You have a 5, a 4, a 3, and now we have another potential 3 for Nissa, Steward of Elements. This scales quite well too with Nissa. All right, on to the Dread Wanderer. Here's the card, Wanderer, the card that I said does trigger off Prize Amalgam. 1 mana for a 2/1, enters the battlefield tapped. You can return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you can only activate this, you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. So Madness-based strategies, Delirium-based strategies will probably want this card because they do typically get out of cards quite quickly. Prize Amalgam, this could easily be instead of running the Haunted Dead. Other than Haunted Dead's easier to activate later on. Yeah, I don't know where this has a place, other than we did need another 1-drop zombie. So now you have the Crypt Breaker and Dread Wanderer, and they do have some synergy together. Yeah, they definitely have some synergy together. You can Crypt Breaker this away and then have this for later on. It can block too, other than it does enter the battlefield tapped. So unlike Gravecrawler that can never block, this can. I don't know if Dredge wants this. I highly doubt Dredge wants this because they usually do have a full hand in the Dredge in Modern. or at least more than one card in hand. But for standard, this is a powerful ability. It will give some more relevance to like Magma Spray and Incendiary Flow to just get rid of this indefinitely. So the Zombie Tribal, absolutely, this is going to be the go-to one-drop, 2/1 for 1 mana. Definitely a great card. So we have Metallic Mimics now, and we have Lord of the Accursed, which is another Zombie Lord, an uncommon Zombie Lord, which is 3 mana for a 2/3. Other zombies you control get +1/+1, and you can tap it for 2 mana, and all zombies gain Menace until end of turn. So this will be our go-to little Lord. It will also curve well with like Metallic Mimic. You name zombies, you get a ton of zombies back. If you're in the Embalm strategy, all of your cards in your graveyard have Embalm being zombies, which now we have a reason to go white-black zombies, as we have another Lord type ability. And so now we'd have to look at all the cards with Embalm to see which ones are worthwhile to put into this deck. We've already had some pretty cool ones that have relatively low Embalm cost. I still think Prized Amalgam does want to be in this type of deck. You don't even need to run blue for Prized Amalgam, as it just is a card that is easy to get back from your graveyard. Now having Dread Wanderer is one, still having the Haunted Dead is another way, and still having even the Scrappy Scrounger, which I still think wants to be in a deck like this, as a way to get back the Prized Amalgams. Alright, so we have Plague Belcher, 3 mana for a 5/4 menace. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 +1 -1/- counters on target creature control. Whenever another zombie control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So now we have when they enter and then they have died, this will absolutely go in the Zombie Tribal. It can just put -1/-1 counter, 2 of them on one of your own, or on itself, which ends up being a 3/2 for 3 mana, which is right on par. You can also just put it on any of these other creatures you don't care about, that then you can get back. Like say you're a Scrap Heap Scrounger, for example, you can put it on, then just get your Scrap Heap back. It can be a way to kill your Scrap Heap Scrounger and then be able to animate it back from your graveyard to get your Prized Amalgams back, which is really, really good. As a 5/4 for 3 mana, it's just bonkers good in this format. Yeah, very, very powerful card. Zombie Tribal, it's here. It's here. I'm glad I spec'd into Crypt Breakers. I didn't buy Relentless Deads though, as I just didn't want to try to. It was still a little bit high for Mythic, I think, when I was looking at that. Alrighty, so we have Sunscorched Desert. I am in love with this card, especially since Eldrazi still exists, and especially since Eldrazi is a relatively aggressive strategy. So this says when it enters the battlefield, it does 1 damage to target player, and it taps for a colorless mana. So think Rally Smasher, Thought-Knot Seer, the Matter Reshaper. All of those are going to work perfectly with the Sunscorched Desert, and just get some value out of it. I've wanted a card like this for a long time. I can't believe they actually printed it. In just kind of theory crafting, I've kind of made my own. Maybe I'll show you the set that I started to design. And this actually was word for word one of the cards that I had, which was a land, colorless land that came in the battlefield, did a damage to a player. Very, very powerful ability because it's half a shock. So your opponent, 19, 18, 17, 16, there's 4 damage in your deck for free. No mana cost to it. Is this playable for Modern? I don't know. Maybe Affinity will want it, as Affinity typically doesn't need colored mana in a lot of the newer Affinity builds. And maybe even Eldrazi. I don't think Eldrazi-tron wants it, though. I think that they do need a lot of sources to hit their green sources or other ones for like the Ancient Stirring type abilities. And so, anyway, I think this is a great card, though. Grim Strider, 3 mana for 6/6. Grim Strider gets -1/-1 for each card in your hand, kind of filler card. Draftable, sure. Cryptic Serpent, 7 mana for 6/5. Costs 1 less for each instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. Kind of the Bedlam Reveler ability. We know how fast Bedlam Reveler came out for 6/5. This is going to see play, because this is just something that, with a lot of cantrips or self-mill, you can cast this for relatively nothing, for 2 mana. And this is going to happen easily. They were smart and did not make this Pauper playable, as this would be very, very weird in Pauper, as it would probably break it again. I don't know. It's like the Affinity one that you can cast for 2 mana. And for a 6/5 body for 2 mana is quite powerful. So this is another card that goes hand in hand with the Drake that we talked about earlier for the spells, the blue-red spells type ability, but this is actually just be a mono-blue type ability. Deem Worthy, 5 mana, 7 damage to target creature, and it has cycling. When you cycle, it deals 2 damage to target creature. I think it's playable in the cycling deck, the free cycling deck, because it deals 2 damage to creature, draw a card for free. That's pretty powerful. Other than that, this is pretty much draft. The Monitor, the Sheffit Monitor, 6 mana for a 6/5. When you cycle it, search your library for a basic land card or a desert card and put it on the battlefield. Not a bad card. 4 mana, though, is quite tough just to have a land come onto the battlefield. Does it put it on the battlefield? Yeah, so this card's pretty good. I think Commander, it's very similar to the Krosin. There is the Cycler that kind of does ramp. I thought it put it in your hand, though, for a land. But any deck that wants a creature into the graveyard, just for, think of like Varls. I really like this card in Varls. Other than it's hard, the 6 mana is hard to then scavenge it back. But a lot of cards that do want cards into the Mimeoplasm, there's one. Mimeoplasm, this is a good target to hit the 6 power to give Mimeoplasm 6+1/+1 counters. But here's another one in the cycling. If you reduce the cycling cost, gets really, really good. Yeah, I have no qualms with this card. I think it's pretty powerful for a 4 mana. What is this type of effect is usually in Ravenous or Rampant Growth. For the Rampant Growth type effect, and draw a card, have like the cantrip on top of it. So it's definitely playable. Stir the Sands, create 3 zombie tokens. Here we go. This is a card that can create 3 zombie tokens with all the lords in the like Crypt Breaker. This basically will give you the zombies to draw a card. The 6 mana is quite high, but you can cycle it again for a free 2/2 black zombie creature token and draw a card. So that's a pretty sweet ability. Also, it gets a sorcery for Delirium if that's relevant. So I do like Stir the Sands. It's going to be great in Limited. The Vizier of the Tumbling Sands, 3 mana. Untap another target permanent. Oh, geez. That's pretty good, cycling 2. And then when you cycle it, you can untap target permanent. So this is a cool cantrip ability. Gets a creature in the graveyard for Scrappy Scrounger, for Delirium, for a bazillion other things. And you can untap another permanent. That's powerful with like the bounce lands in Commander. And it's, I don't know if it's quite playable in like Modern, just because 3 mana is pretty tough. Because you got to think like the Jeskai Ascendancy type combo decks that want to untap a permanent. This has got to be busted. I mean, all of these cards usually bust something in a standard base format where you can untap and rinse and repeat with whether a card is giving huge value out of being untapped. Aetherworks Marvel, for example, activating it twice in a turn if you have the energy for it. At the moment, though, I don't know if there's anything that I mean, this is going to be great right off the bat for the Exert cards as a way to untap them. And the cycling really does make this playable because when it's not relevant, it's a cantrip that untaps a permanent, draws a card, puts a creature in your graveyard. That's a pretty powerful little strategy right there. All right, then I think that we had April 10th I didn't talk about here. We'll go over these kind of quickly. We have Heaven, Earth. Heaven deals X damage to target to each creature with flying. Earth deals X damage to each creature without flying for X and 2 mana. Both these are pretty good. This takes care of Thopters type strategy for green. This is very playable even without the Earth portion. Whenever it actually can take care of the Heart of Krans for 5 mana that you spend into it and can wipe quite a bit of your opponent's field. If Spirits ever does become a thing again, this is going to be their bane to their existence. And then in Naya or Jund or just green-red, this is going to give another way to sweep ground creatures as well. So I really like Heaven. The really cool thing about Heaven Earth, too, is you can just actually cast Heaven for 1 and just get in your graveyard to then Earth on the same turn. Or, I mean, if you have that sort of mana, that's actually viable. So don't underestimate Heaven Earth. I think it's a very, very powerful card in the format. Probably the best split card so far that we've seen. The Pyramid of the Pantheon, 1 mana, 2, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, put a brick counter on the Pyramid of Pantheon, and then if it has 3 or more brick counters, it can tap to add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Insanely powerful commander card. It does, this is netting down. It does fix really well, but as soon as you get the 3 brick counters on it, it's going to be a Gilded Lotus. So I do see this seeing play. I mean, it's basically just netting down 1 mana. It does give an artifact for 1 mana as well. So you never know if that's going to be relevant with all the cards and Licensed Disintegrations. All the decks that want artifacts, this could be their go-to card, just have an artifact out. It helps fix, too. So, again, it's 2 and tap, add 1 mana to your mana pool. And if you're playing a 3 or 4 color deck, that is not that bad. See the combo, maybe? I don't know. And add 3 mana to your mana pool is huge. once it does become the Gilded Lotus. The Quarry Hauler, 4 mana. When it enters the battlefield, for each kind of counter on target permanent, put another counter. So speaking of brick counters, this does add another counter. Walking Ballista adds a counter. Planeswalkers adds a counter. Has a 4/3 body for 4 mana. Is common too, so that's interesting. So it's playable. It might not be the right card in certain type of decks, but just think going back in Commander, how many cards want one more counter of something that are hard to get, and that's a very, very powerful ability. Doom Dissenter, 2 mana for a 1/1. When Doom Dissenter dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Sure, these are always quite good abilities. The Doom Traveler, yeah. Reduce, counter target spell unless its controller plays 3, and then Rubble, which is playable by itself. We have plenty of these in the format, and then Rubble, Aftermath, up to 3 target lands. Don't untap during the next untap step. This is great for the blue-red tempo shell, like the Thermo Alchemist, as it does have 2 spells for Thermo Alchemist and the Thing in the Ice, and both of them are very relevant. Counter spell, and then basically time walk your opponent, or do a very good job of time walking your opponent. Neheb the Worthy. Buy your didgeridoos, because you finally have a Minotaur legendary creature. 3 mana for a 2/2. Other Minotaurs you have first strike. We haven't seen any other Minotaurs, right? Crazy. So maybe they're coming. Maybe this was just like, well, we forgot to in Theros. Here's your legendary Minotaur. But I don't think we've seen any other Minotaurs. We'll look and see. Other Minotaurs you have first strike as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. Minotaurs you control with +2/+0. And whenever it deals combat damage, each player discards a card. So it actually does help set up your own Minotaurs, get +2/+0. There's tons of cards out of Theros, so if you haven't spec'd into those, they might be worthwhile in the Theros block. For all the other Minotaur lords, this is going to give a commander card for the Minotaur people to play, and so it will spike up all of the Minotaurs in the past that can go in the deck. Unfortunately, Boros Reckoner cannot because it has white in its symbol, but all of the other cards from the Theros block, which was red-black Minotaurs, are going to see a little bit of spike and increase in play just for Commander. So we'll have to wait and see if there's any more Minotaurs. It does look like there's a Minotaur right here picture, and so we might be getting more, and we might actually have some. I mean, this is mainly Jackals that have been printed, so we'll wait and see if there are other Minotaurs. It is a warrior, too, if that's relevant. I think a lot of the Minotaurs are warriors. Unburdened, 3 mana, target player discards 2 cards, cycling 2. I'm going to tell you right now how in love I am of this card. Because if anyone's played Limited, if you have the discarded cards, the Mind... this is printed in every set, and I can't think of what it is. 3 mana, just target player discards 2 cards. It's a really good card on curve, or a little bit later on when your opponent has 2 or 3 cards left in their hand, so they're waiting for their bomb 5, 6, 7 drops, and you make them discard it, because in Limited, that's what happens. You play out your hand, and you usually, later on, this is relevant. But it sucks when it gets stuck in your hand. Unburden is the perfect card to cycle it away, and I love this card in Limited. I'll probably pick this up a lot highly, whereas I just ignore other cards that didn't have cycling that do this effect. So do not underestimate this in Limited. The cycling is going to be extremely relevant. Alright, pull from tomorrow, draw X cards, then discard a card. I think we talked about these cards, didn't we? Where'd I get to? Oh, maybe I think I got to Soulscar Mage. Maybe I haven't talked about any of these. But no, I think we did get to pull from tomorrow. And yep, I have talked about all these in the previous. Maybe I even talked about these in the previous one. I'm just getting ahead of myself. Well, you got some other insight into these cards if I did not talk about it in my other spoiler video. I know it came out about this time though, because we did do it the same on Monday. We did a spoiler video. Wow, I'm 43 minutes into this video. Hope you got enough earful of talking about each individual card. Again, this can be used more of a podcast type if you're listening to this. People ask me to put this on a podcast. If a fan wants to do that, just turn these videos into audio, go for it. I don't even care if you monetize or do whatever the hell you want to do with my my spoiler videos or Market Mondays. If you want to put them, I just do not have the time at this moment to really convert them. It's just out of my scope of what I do as a content producer. I just don't want to spread myself too thin. As many of you know, I've talked about in this past, the YouTube channel is going through some very, very weird times with views and subs. Everything, I looked at my analytics, even dislikes are down 70%. So we're down 70% across the board on every metric for analytics. that you can think of. View counts, duration watched, subscribers, likes, dislikes, shares, everything is down. And so I'm trying to figure that out, and it's really taking a lot of my time trying to research that and trying to speculate on the best way to move forward. But I appreciate everyone that stuck with Rogue Deck Builder. I'm still trying to up the content. We're getting a lot of Commander videos here in the near future as I'm becoming more and more into Commander, because it does seem to be a brewer's paradise, and it does seem like it needs a brewer. Commander does have kind of what I like to call the inbred effect. Like, people play against certain cards, and then that means other people just pick them up just because people are playing them, and it just becomes like an inbred format just because of yeah. And so anyway, I want to start brewing in that format just to kind of mix things up or give my take on how I play Commander. Anyway, this has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.